Okay, this wall is the key to this stove. Let's see, where would the barrel? The barrel would be pretty high up here. Okay, this stove test couldn't be going much better. Goes smoke-free inside of 2 minutes, and it'll stay smoke-free for hours and hours. The heat of the barrel combined with the about 800 pounds of masonry. The draft is incredible. I'm really excited about this, guys. Put a wall up to block the chimney, so it has to go over the wall and then back down. There's hardly any cuts. There's no cuts to put the door in. Anybody can do this. No skill needed. Let me go get my temperature gauge and see how we're doing on the barrel. This took me 45 minutes to put everything together, and you could build this in you could build it in 4 hours with mortar. These side pieces are not part of the stove. They're just to hold the edge of the barrel, and then there's another one on the other side, and still no smoke. Let's see. Added some new wood. $485, $470, over 500 on the top. I mean, this is, it's radiating out like any wood stove would. There's a wall up the middle. Flames have to come up the wall. I couldn't make the wall very high because I had to put the barrel over it by myself, and I didn't want to knock all the bricks because they're loose. Comes up to about here, and then funnels over the wall, and without that wall it would just go right to the chimney, of course, go right out and smoke. Forces it up. You don't have to be real, it's not like a rocket stove riser, don't need to be real high with this wall. Just about 8 inches or so from the top. I'm a little bit short of that. I probably have 10 inches. It's nice. I really like you can open the door and add wood and you don't get any smoke coming out at you. I hate that aspect of most wood stoves where the smoke, just because of the baffle, it throws it in your face. I like to be able to add wood anytime. This is much better. It is hot as heck. 525. No smoke. Once it gets going, I think it's best to put in an air blocker so you can get an extra 15 or 20 minutes out of the wood. That's plenty once it gets going. Plenty of air. Of course, this is just for my test. The ash door should probably be too deep or too high. It's a little hard to get a shovel in there. Okay, let me break it down. I'll show you how I built it. It's just 2 pieces of 6-inch stovepipe. The elbow is not a flex 90 degree. It's a fixed solid 90 degree. This is just, there you go. That makes it easy. I was going to show you that separate piece. Yeah, so I probably have this screwed together. Yeah. Actually, I don't even think that's stovepipe. That's just spray painted dryer vent pipe I use for tests. You would want to use stovepipe, not the adjustable or the telescoping or whatever. The fixed, the hard 90 degree elbow. It just sits in there, and then I'll put it back a bit. The tension, the weight of it holds it. Of course, your pipe extends a little bit out to the right. You would need to secure it, the tension of it wanting to fall this way with a wire or something. And then you just pack the crap out of this space with that Imperial high heat cement that comes in the little yogurt type tub. Okay, this wall is the key to this stove. Let's see, where would the barrel? The barrel would be pretty high up here. I would go one more row of bricks with the wall. I wouldn't go any higher. There's no reason to pinch it off. I got a lot of heat in the barrel. I mean, this might be good enough, but the key, boy, those flames really shot up the back of that wall, and the wall almost is like a magnet. It just draws the flames up into the barrel, and of course, there's a lot of room here. Maybe, I don't know what it was, 14 inches between the top of the wall, maybe 18 inches to the top of the barrel. So yeah, a lot of hot gases were getting out a little bit too quickly, but you know, with that momentum, they were funneling up to the top of the barrel. I would go one more row up on the wall. I'd leave a good 8 to 10 inches at the top. I would not squeeze it off. There is just no point in it. And then funnel over, but these flames are allowed to lap up so high, it eats up almost all the smoke. It went smoke free very, very quickly. Hits the top of the barrel. No, there's no stratification chamber up here, folks. People are in love with that concept. Then back down the wall. Well, it'd be nice if we could get the pipe to go out the bottom, but you don't need to. You could do that if you just want to use a barrel without a hole cut in the back. You could put your pipe at the very bottom. We need to talk about the end. You need a really good insulated chimney to pull, though. You could do that but you'd probably have to prime the stove. With the barrel hole is cut about here. I'm going to try a test on I'm going to do a bigger version of this, and I'm going to see if it will go start up without priming, without getting smoke out the front for more than a few seconds. The wall is just, let me just do this quickly. It's just these are all independent on the sides, halves. The wall is just bricks, just stacked on top of each other on the side from the bottom, as high as you want to go. Squeezed on the sides. Once they're mortared in, they're not going anywhere. That's it, piece of cake. The firebox, or really the stove itself, is only 2 bricks wide. You know, I'm in love with the 2 brick wide. That's it, 1, 2. This is not part of the stove. These are just on the side. You know, one on top of the other, simply to hold the barrel. The barrel there's another one on the other side like this, unattached. I mean, if you're making it permanently your house, you want to put a little mortar, but it can be built separately at the end. This holds the barrel. You can see the outline of the barrel there. And then you have another one of these on that side to hold the barrel. And then you need at least 20 gauge metal plate. Okay, the barrel rested on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The barrel rested on row 8. If I was going to build this in my cabin, say, I would go 1 row higher. Including the base, the barrel would rest on row 9. Firebox here, I just measured, is just about 20 inches from here to here. Of course, on an angle, you could get 22-inch logs in here. I'd go 1 higher on the barrel, and then I would go 1 higher where the door is. It's just, if you have 3 big pieces of oak here, there's plenty of room, but I don't know. I like coming in higher and having enough room just to toss in. There's no reason not to go one higher. So that's what I would do. I would have that door. Let's see. I'll show you where the door starts. Just remember, it should go 1 higher. I kind of like leaving the clean out door, that just 1 little thin slot like that. And of course it's 1 fire brick wide, but I would use, for air regulation, I would use a much smaller paver, like at Home Depot and Lowe's has these small ones. That way, you know, when you put a lot of air can slip through on the sides, and then when you do your ash clean out, you know, it just comes out easy. I think it should be enough. Get a shovel like this, just kind of flatten it out or flat. Go all the way to the back. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not the greatest. Some people might want to make that go up one more in height and make this a double for ash clean out. But you get your shovel in there. Any real big pieces, if you choked it off and they didn't burn through, I mean, you just reach in and you could get the big pieces out like that. It's not the greatest, but it's not bad. It's just if you make this doubly big, you have to design something, or put in another one of these doors or something much smaller to as an ash door, but also becomes an air door. Okay, I know this is a row higher. The barrel rests on this level, just because the barrel you can almost see my barrel's so old. Every time I burn, pieces chip off and flake off. If you can afford a stainless steel barrel, they're like $200 or something. Of course, it would be worth it than the $10 ones you get at the junkyard like I got. This is one higher because, of course, once the barrel ends, then you build this shelf out until you run into your metal. The front's one row higher. Just like the last few tests we've done with this high flame, this is an ash clean out door, but we're using it for our primary door for wood loading. The high flame, again, like I mentioned, is not available on Amazon anymore, but I think they're all pretty much the same. The great thing about this door is it's like no cuts. It just fits in perfectly. It's absolutely perfect. Let me just pull this out. So this is called an 8-inch ash clean out door. Before we're done, guys, I'll measure those inside measurements for you because it fits in here perfectly, absolutely perfectly. 3 bricks at this side. It's 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. Okay, and it's a little tight, so it pushes these bricks up a bit, but it's going to be perfect because there's going to be a little mortar in here, very small joints for fire bricks, and these will sit perfectly on the ledge. It's absolutely perfect. Well, there's a few halves in here. I'll talk about that a little bit later, cutting halves for fire bricks, but it just absolutely fits in perfectly. Okay, I've broken it down to here. Right now the wall is just loose bricks, but that's for my test. We've talked about this before, but you can see the cut there. I liked this. This is a fire brick. It cuts very easily. If you don't use a wet saw, make sure you have a mask on. The silica is very dangerous to breathe in. I like a wet saw. What I used, you shouldn't do this. I used a wet saw, a cheap tile wet saw. A cheap tile wet saw has no teeth. It almost, if you just touch it with your finger lightly, it will not even cut you, I don't think. There's no teeth. It's a tile wet saw. At Harbor Freight, they go for $38 to $42, and I removed the guard so I could get my fire brick all the way through. It doesn't cut all the way through. You have to then flip it, but I made a piece of tape and I had my line, and I like the real cheap fire brick worked for real cheap wet saw worked for me. You could use a circular saw with a masonry blade or an angle grinder, which your cut will not be as clean. It'll be a little bit all over the place, and your sand and your dust will fly up, and it's dangerous. And do not try to break fire brick with a chisel. Do not try to score with a chisel. It is a waste of time. Okay, the base of the stove is 16 bricks. It's just 2 facing each other like that. 16 on the bottom, and then this is 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For each level where there's no opening for the door, it's 10. And I don't know if I'll remember to edit it, but when I said you need a half every other row, you only need a half every other row when you have an opening in the front. Of course, you don't have any halves. Once you start building up and there's no opening for the clean out door or for the stove, the wood loading door, then it's we're just doing this so we can add our bricks up for later. It's 10 per row, of course, staggered. So we'll add the bricks up, total bricks later. If I was making this, I'm going to test it. I don't think anything. The draft was absolutely perfect. I loved everything about this stove. But I'm going to try. I'm going to go probably one. I don't know if I'll go a half more or I'll go one more fire brick longer, and I will go one or two higher. I'll build a monster that could hold 4 big, huge pieces of oak and burn the crap out of it just to see if there's any difference. I don't think there will be. But when you go back farther, you definitely need a bigger clean out door or door for the shovel. Well, you don't. If you put a metal extension on the shovel, you can get it all the way back to the wall. But it's awfully tough to clean out if you go any longer. For the wall, guys, I don't know about there. Remember, the hole for the barrel is about here, so it doesn't need the width of a half a fire brick here is 4.5. Half of a fire brick is 4.5. It doesn't need more than 4.5 to find its way down to the hole in the barrel. You don't want to do this with your wall, but you don't want to do this either. And it actually will hurt your draft. So I might play with this too. I probably would leave a full fire brick. That's it. A full fire brick. This is just on the outside, 4.5. And for the wall, leave 8 to 10 inches to get over the top. With this stove, there's no reason to make get that wall close to the top of the barrel. No reason. It doesn't. To me, it won't make any difference in the heat of your barrel. It's coming up with such speed, it's going to slam the top of the barrel anyway. And finally, priming is an issue. When I build the big one, when you light it, will it just start flowing? It's okay if it gets confused for 10 seconds, but after 10 to 15 seconds, it's got to be flowing in the right direction, or it'll smoke your house out. Will it want to go in the right direction right off a light without any priming or warming of the chimney? If not, what we do from a couple of videos back, we have to build a small slit, not at that level, one level up from there. You build a small slit when you could reach back and put a fire starter in to warm up the pipe. I'm just going to try it. I'm going to try. I'm going to build the bigger one, and I'm going to try a bunch of tests on it. But this right here works. This will be 30, 40, 50 fire bricks less than the big one. This stove has no downside. It is just, I was thrilled with every single aspect of it at this size, and even where the door was. If you don't want to go one row higher, it just works. Just inserting this, the fire brick total I'm about to give you does not include those sides to hold the barrel, because you can use a lot of different things on the side. The fire brick total does not include the sides. Okay guys, the back end conversation for anybody that wants to build this thing. With a full-size wall going 8 to 10 inches up away from the top of the barrel, 8 or 10 inch gap at the top, you're going to need the minimum 110 fire bricks. 112 is, you probably get away with 110 to 112. I'd buy 115 to 118 fire bricks. You're going to have to make some cuts. You could make some mistakes. Buy 120 if you can. You probably have 8 left over or so. A fire brick in this part of Pennsylvania is now up to, never goes down, of course, $2.15, $2.12 a fire brick. These are the cheaper, heavy fire bricks. You can get most cinder places that sell concrete block or pavers sell fire brick. These are they're not the expensive reflective fire bricks that you get online. If you shop online, be careful. Most are kiln reflective fire bricks at $6 to $7 a brick. These are the cheaper, heavy, but it's you're fine on the temperature. You don't need the reflective kiln fire bricks, and they're softer and they don't hold up as well either. So you would need to buy at least one 40-pound bag of refractory mortar, which, would be, a place up here is not too bad, like $45 for a 40-pound bag. It can go as high as $55 to $60 for a 40-pound bag. You might be able to get away with maybe with one bag, because the joints for fire brick should be very, very thin. Dunk the fire brick, get it wet, keep it under water for 3 to 5 seconds, shake it off, soaking wet, apply the refractory mortar, tamp it down so there's hardly any joint. Just 1/8 to 1/16. If you're not an expert bricklayer, you have to leave a tiny bit of joint, because you're going to make mistakes and one end's going to stick out more than the other, and having joints allows you to, with a rubber hammer, make corrections. So that's, one of the reasons to have a little bit of a joint. But you're not going to, I don't think you're going to be able to get away with one bag. Unfortunately, I think you're going to need 2. Actually, buy 3 or 4 more fire bricks, because your your top should be where it's just a fire brick ceiling on the top of the firebox. It should be too thick for safety purposes, so no gases squeak out. But that's only in the front. Again, your barrel covers most of the stove, so the top layer right above the and I have those 2 fire bricks that kind of stick up. I just have them kind of on their sides, laying on top of the metal. You could do whatever in there. You could pour some. You don't have to do that, of course, but you do want to have a double layer of fire brick at the very front. You don't need much, because most of it is barrel. And now for your sides, I did not include that in the fire brick total. There's no reason to use fire brick for the sides. You could use just any brick, cheap brick, whatever, cement block, whatever you could get for free. You just want to build the sides up to the same level, because it's going to help support your barrel. So as you come up with mortar, just make sure you're making your joints big enough or small enough so when you finish up, it's going to be a different size brick. Almost all red brick is never the size of fire brick. So you want to make it, of course, you want to finish up level. You don't want to have like 2-inch joints at the top, because you have to jury rig it at the top to make it level. And sure, this is about a cheap stove that's going to get you through 15 winters, and it's cheap, but there's a design element we could talk about. Those sides where you build up the bricks on the side to hold the barrel. You could a different sort of brick would look really cool. I would think, even if I had time, like, you could collect up stones from the forest, and with type S cement, like a stone wall. You could brick up the sides a bit. Don't cover too much, because you want your fire brick exposed to let the heat radiate out. But eventually those stones, of course, will heat up. But I wouldn't. The stones will take hours and hours and hours to radiate out their heat. I'd build up 2 little stone walls on the side, and then make pour the top or just one of those leveler molds or something like that. I think it would make it look cool. And make sure this, if you use stones or do something like that, or whatever you decide to use on the sides, put it in a campfire, or make sure it's a material that absorbs and holds heat, isn't reflective or anything. That's a good I don't know, what would that be on the sides? That's a good 110 pounds or so on each side, of a total of 220 pounds of mass. That is going to eventually, heat up. Those side pieces, make sure it's a material that absorbs and stores heat. Some stones, absorb better than others, and some bricks absorb better than others. So just that is part of your stove. It's going to take 2.5 hours for those side pieces to get real warm, but it'll probably take another 2.5 hours for them to completely exhaust their heat once the stove is out. Okay, if you don't have access to refractory mortar, what would I use for these very porous? Remember, with any sort of mortar, you want to dunk them and soak them, because fire brick is very porous, but you don't have to get them as wet depending if you use alternative forms of refractory. The old, what the Russians have been using for 400 years, basically 3 parts sand to 1 part fire clay. Fire clay is not a whole lot different than the clay you find in the soil. If the clay has a good fat content, they say, like if you step on, put a tire rolls over it, holds the shape of the tire, not crumbles apart. You've seen mud that where a tire rolls over, it just holds that tread mark for a year. That's clay. And you can, look online, look on YouTube. You can harvest clay if you put it in water and you sift it and you sift it. You can make clay and fire clay. No, clay is not going to burn. There's no difference really, except the fire clay is all ready to go and it perfectly sifted. You can make your own. So okay, if one fire clay is still expensive, like $45 a bag. So 3 parts sand. Small sand, you could use play sand, but building sand, concrete sand, cement sand. 3 parts sand to 1 part clay. If you really are out in the middle of your homestead, in the middle of nowhere, you don't have access to anything, you have no money, harvest the clay up in the surrounding area, in your field or whatever. Learn what the difference is between regular dirt and high clay content soil. So if you're really in the middle of nowhere, you need to get a bag of sand and at least 1 or 2 bags of cement. You're going to need that. By the way, I would add a half part cement, even to what the Russians do, the 3 parts sand, 1 part clay. I'd go half type S cement. Add a little cement to that, it'd be fine. Okay, you have no money, you're in the middle of nowhere. 3 parts sand, 2 parts clay or the dirt, the high clay content dirt you get from the soil. 3 sand, 2 dirt. I would add 1 part or a half part of wood ash. Just wood ash you sift up and collect up from your fire and your fire pits. And then a good half part to 1 part cement, type S or type N, not concrete with stones. And lime, if you just a bag of lime, 1 part of lime, but that turns everything white. Some people don't like the look of it, and it doesn't come off. It turns the whole stove white. So that would be fine. People yelling at me saying you're not supposed to use cement in high heat. It's such a small amount of cement. It just acts as a little bit of a binder. I don't think it would be. And your joints are very small, 1/16 of an inch. Tap it down with a rubber hammer. Very, very small, tiny joints on fire bricks. Have no money. 3 parts sand, 2 parts dirt. Highest clay content you can. A half or a full part wood ash, which is so powdery, it's like nothing. It goes to nothing. And a half part to 3/4 parts cement, type N or type S, as a binder. I've heard even the Russians complain about this. If they do a full stove with just 3 parts sand to 1 part clay, it takes weeks to dry out. Things can kind of slide around. And it never fully binds. There's no binder there. There's no glue. So they use reinforcement. I always to me, I'd add a little binder. And yeah, cement doesn't like high heat, but if it's 10% of the total mix, it's going to hold. If things start to crack or whatever, just repair your cracks later. Trowel your cracks later. Big deal. And always have, for the barrel especially, go get 3 or 4. Always have a couple bites on hand. The Imperial, sold on Amazon. The Imperial high heat stove cement in the little it's like in the little yogurt, not the caulk stuff. Although that's pretty good stuff too. The caulk gun stuff. It's like in a little yogurt, tub or whatever, a little tiny tub, like a butter tub. A Imperial high heat. I think it's a Canadian product. You put a rubber glove on and with your rubber glove, you just pack under the barrel, around the barrel. Some people would say, under the barrel, put, a thin layer of ceramic insulation because of different expansion rates. The white high heat ceramic insulation cut just to a 1/2 inch. You could do that. Probably is a good idea. Or a little mineral wool under the barrel for expansion. I don't know. It's not, to me, again, my stoves are about people that don't have any skills and don't have any money. If you just had the barrel laying on top of the fire brick, you pack the crap around it and reach in and pack the inside as well through the hole in the barrel of the Imperial high heat mortar. The expansion, crack a little bit or whatever, and just repair it with a rubber glove. I mean, big deal. It'll settle. I don't know. I don't think it'll be the end. It might help if you can get the ceramic high heat 2,500 degree white insulation. That shit's like, for a roll of 2 feet, it's like $45. So you could try to pack it with the dirt and the clay and the sand and a little bit of cement. But for your final layer, you don't want any gases slipping under the barrel, and that's unhealthy. The last layer, put your rubber glove on and pack it with the Imperial product. Even over, as a second layer over what you decide to do under the barrel. That's what I would do. Oh, last thing about dunking and getting the fire brick soaking wet. Yeah, I mean, you don't, maybe you could, if it's just the clay and the sand and a little tiny bit of cement and not the refractory mortar. I don't know. You don't have to get it soaking wet. Maybe a spray bottle. It's gonna pull moisture out of the clay and out of your dirt. Your mortar mix is still made up of water, of course. So, you got to mix it so that consistency where it kind of sticks to the side of the trowel, maybe slowly slides off. You don't, getting that mortar mixed right, so it should butter on, but not fall off, shouldn't flake off. That's beyond the scope of what I'm going to get into here. You still need to give a quick dunk, I would say, to this fire brick. It's just too porous. Even if you use the sand and the dirt and the wood ash and the little 1 part cement, it's still going to pull all the moisture out of your mortar. So yeah, maybe you don't have to hold it under for 5 seconds, but definitely give it one quick dunk. It's just too porous. Thanks, guys. I guess that's it. There'll be more. This stove could help a lot of people. I mean, it's the best of all worlds. You've got the mass of the 1,000+ pounds of the fire brick, plus the immediate heat from the barrel. And I'm gonna try to refine this stove and make a bigger version and a few other add-ons. I'm thinking if all works out. So we'll continue to talk about this stove over the next few weeks. Okay, looking at doors on Amazon.com. My high flame door, top right, is back. It was gone for a while. I got mine for like $38. It's up to $49, but everything's more expensive. The other ones that say clean out 8x8, they're all probably the same. I mean, I just like the high flame. I'm sure they're all pretty much the same. That one that's $29. I mean, it's probably pretty lightweight. You don't want aluminum, but any sort of lightweight metal. The door in this case, again, I like the heavy. These are heavy iron. The high flame and the others, it's a heavy iron. You might be able to get away with the $29 door. It's just. But if you can just put together the extra $20, it's worth it to get the iron door, because the doors, everything's the flame's moving away from the door, and it's not going to get that hot. It doesn't really need to be heavy duty. If you have the money for a glass door, everybody likes to look at the fire. I mean, you're going to be looking at like $350. But what is it? Firespeaking.com has glass doors for stoves that are $200 or $300 less expensive than other places I've seen. But the difference, $50 for the high flame. You're looking at $300 more if you could to afford a glass door. Okay, last thing, how do you put these doors in to a fire brick stove? This is not my area of expertise. I've only done one full-size masonry heater for myself. All these tests that I do are about seeing how the gases in flame move and to create no smoke. And I'd shove doors in like you saw there, just shove them in with no mortar. This is not my area of expertise. But like the gasket there, do you need to use the gasket? In 1,000 videos I've watched of the Russians, they do not use the gasket, and gasket cement's not going to hold the gasket to a porous fire brick anyway. They generally they use about a half-inch layer of the white ceramic, good to 2,000 degrees or whatever, ceramic insulation. They cut strips of it, like 1-inch strips, and they put that for expansion and contraction, because the iron door contracts differently than the fire brick. They put the 1-inch strip of the ceramic fiber insulation around the door, and then they'll put their mortar. They'll put the ceramic insulation. How does that? Now I'm confused. The mortar ceramic insulation, goes around the door, and then that gets set into the bed of mortar. And use a little bit more cement. I know it doesn't. This stove does not get super hot in the front. Everything kind of moves towards the back and towards the barrel. Whatever you're using, your dirt, your sand, put a little bit more cement or a little bit more binder in for the door. You want to hold it. If there's holes in the back of the door, always use wire through the holes to secure. Put the wire in the joints of the fire brick to hold. Use the wire to also as a secondary way to secure the door.
And if it cracks or whatever, it gets loose or it starts to crack a bit in a year or two, well, so what? Just 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 mix some more stuff up and reseal it in. Big deal, right? So this is not my area of expertise, but I don't think I've watched 1,000 videos of the Russians making their gigantic brick stoves. They don't use the gasket here. They do not use it. They use just a thin strip of the white ceramic insulation cut, just long strips of it, very thin, and the mortar goes on top of the mortar.